guys, it's Tori, and today I am starting my end of the year reading vlog. I'm just going to vlog what I read for this last month of the year. It is December 6th when I'm starting this. I just finished my last vlog and I wanted to get this one started before I get some rest. I have been sick, and so I hopefully don't sound too horrible, but I have been sick. So if you do notice anything in my voice, that's why. But yeah, that's also why I want to get this done so that I can get some rest before I have some things I need to deal with tonight. So I just barely finished The Alloy of Law by Brandon Sanderson. Really enjoyed it, finished it last night. And I decided after that to pick up Prize Women by Carolyn Lee. I did do a Pile of Possibilities video earlier this month, and this was one on the list. This was one of two that I really insist that I get to in December. This story is based on a true story. I don't know how much is actually true as far as the main characters, but it's connected to a real event for sure. And this event occurs in Toronto, Canada, and there is a man who passes away. He's very wealthy. He passes away, and in his will he decides to leave the remainder of his fortune after, giving it to a little bit of family and donating it and stuff. The last bit of his fortune he wants to give to the woman who births the most children within the 10 years after his death in Toronto. And so we follow two women who are kind of getting involved in this promised opportunity to gain a fortune, and that's all I know about it. But I've heard it's sad. It sounds interesting. It actually doesn't have very many ratings on Goodreads, which was kind of surprising because it was one that just popped up on a couple of lists when I was looking up upcoming releases for 2023, and apparently it just didn't get very widespread. So I'm going to read it, and maybe I can promote it a little bit if I ended up liking it. Maybe I'll hate it, I don't know. But it has, even though it doesn't have very many ratings, it does have an almost 4-star rating on Goodreads for an average. So I feel like that's a pretty good sign. I don't know. We'll see how it goes. But that's what I'm starting with. I also probably will start listening to the audiobook for Mistborn, the original trilogy. I've decided that before I continue with the Alloy of Law series, I need to reread the original trilogy because I feel like I remember enough that it wasn't super confusing. Like, I picked up on certain titles being given to certain specific characters from the original trilogy, but there was one person who's brought up at the end of the book that I didn't even remember existing, and I don't know why that memory is gone from me. But to be fair, I read the original Mistborn trilogy in like my junior year of high school, which was almost 10 years ago now. So it's been a long time, and I just feel like I need to revisit that. So I think I'm going to listen to the audiobook of that. So I'll include my thoughts on that in here. And then I think I had plans for the month of December that you'll have seen that Pile of Possibilities. Obviously, Prize Women I have on that list. The other one I specifically really intend to get to is Sylvia's Lovers. I think those are my main two that I really, really want to get to from that list of, it was only 4 books, so there's just 2 others that I thought about. But I'm going to have to see on the other 2 because I realized as I was like prepping to sit down for this video, actually, I was like, you know what? I kind of want to make sure that I'm trying to reach for things that I think could potentially be favorites. It's been several months since I've read a book for the first time that I absolutely loved, and that's kind of really sad to me. So I think I'm going to seek out some books that I think I'll enjoy a lot, really get into, and we'll just see how it goes. I'm hoping I can find 1 or 2 that just really stand out to me so I can have at least something on my favorites of the year that was read in the last half, because I feel like I have almost nothing from this second half of the year that will end up on that list. So we'll hope that I can find a new favorite this month, but we'll just have to see, I guess. All right, so I was debating whether to even make this clip right now because I was like, I don't know. I'm kind of tired, first of all. Biggest reason is I'm like, it's almost my bedtime. I don't know if I want to film a clip right now. And I also feel like my thoughts are not very coherent right now, but I just think I need to talk this out a little bit. I think I've probably made my decision about this book, but I do feel like I need to talk them out a little bit. So it is actually just the next day since the last clip that you would have seen, and I am a little over 100 pages from the end of Prize Women, so I've made it a good chunk of the way. And I just, like I said, my thoughts are kind of all over the place. I started off this book, we start off actually in the perspective of
one of our main characters, Lily, and I really enjoy her perspective for most of it. There's a few things that I don't love, but overall I would say I really enjoy her. May, I've been a lot more miss with. There's moments where I like her, but I overall haven't loved her all that much. I also have found that I really enjoy the writing style. I think the characterization that this author, Carolyn Lee, is able to produce is really wonderful, and I think she does a great job. So I would say, as far as author craftsmanship, I think this is a well done historical fiction. What I'm struggling with, though, is just a myriad of things, I guess. First of all, like I said, I don't really love May. I just think she's a very selfish person who has like moments of breaking out of her selfishness, but like overall is mostly selfish. She's mostly just thinking about her own feelings and struggles and not really caring about other people's, and it just gets very wearing to read from, especially because it's kind of being made out to be like she's in the right because she definitely has these struggles that we need to recognize, kind of a thing, but which I don't necessarily think is wrong. I just don't like how the story is acting like she's in the right in any way, and I just feel like she's just very selfish. This book also has some cheating in it, which is not something I love. If you've been on my channel for a while, you probably know that that's probably my biggest trope in books that I hate and can really turn me off. I think most other tropes can be done well in my opinion, and even cheating, if it's done in certain ways and is approached in certain ways, I've been able to deal with it. But it's the one that I am least likely to be able to deal with, and I really don't love it in this book. I also just really hate books that have all this characterization for women and none for the men, and I don't like the opposite either. Like, I just want fully developed men and women as human beings and to respect them all as human beings with their own problems. I don't want us to be comparing problems and struggles and saying, oh, this person has it worse than this person. It's just never helpful, and it just diminishes when you rank things like that. It just diminishes the problems somebody is going through. And I know obviously throughout history, men in a public way have had it easier than women on a public front because of the nature of sexism and things like that. But private problems are always there for every single person, and it's just not fair to act like the private problems of the men are just not that important, because clearly it's going to be very impactful to them. And so there's like a point in this book where May's husband is really struggling with depression, heavy depression, and it's really impacting his ability to function, and she is just not being very sensitive to it at all. Like, she has like moments where she's like, she understands, but then it like immediately goes back to her being like disgusted by him and like angry with him and stuff. And I understand it's kind of a situation there that you would be angry with your husband if he was acting that way, but it's also coming from a place where he's hurting a lot, and beyond that, it's coming from a place where she's been before. Like, she at the beginning of this story was in a very similar place. She dealt with it differently than he is, but she also dealt with depression and these really severe negative emotions. She just, like I said, dealt with it in a different way than he did, but it did like isolate her emotionally from him, and throughout most of this book she's been isolated emotionally from him, and now he is from her, and she's like all mad and grossed out and disgusted by it, and it just made me so upset. So I was already thinking about DNFing this book, and then that happened, and I was like, I really just do not like this woman. I have mostly been skimming for the past 50 or so pages because I'm just like, I just want to see, and I was kind of getting to the point where I was like, if I don't finish it today, I'm not going to finish it. And like I said, it's almost my bedtime. I have over 100 pages left. I'm not gonna finish it, and I think I'm just gonna say, yeah, it's a DNF. I think I'll still count it as read on Goodreads and Storygraph because I did get close enough. I'm well over halfway, and I'm probably gonna just spoil myself for the end to see what exactly happens, because I am curious to see some of the outcomes. I just don't want to read it. Like, I just don't want to stay in these characters' heads. I would much rather just know and then move on with my life. So that's where I'm at, unfortunately. When I originally was thinking about doing this clip, I honestly wasn't sure if I was going to DNF or not, but I think I've talked myself into it officially, that I think, I mean, it's the last month of the year, and I've mentioned that this year, the last like 3 or 4 months have not been very good reading months for me, and I'm really disappointed by it, and I just really want to read some really great books in December. So if I'm not liking something, and if I think it's going to be a mid book, I'm probably going to DNF DNF it, and that's the case with this one. I just want to read something I love and really am excited about reading, and this is just not it. Unfortunately, I was really hoping I'd enjoy it a lot more than I did, but like I said, the craftsmanship of the author is really good, and so I think I would be willing to read more by this author. I know she wrote one called The Glass Woman that I've heard good things about, so I may be willing to read that at some point, because I do, like I said, I think she's a good author, and so I just think this particular story and these particular characters are just not for me. And it could be something that the author just regularly does with her characters, as far as some of these, like the cheating stuff and a lot of the women good, men evil kind of stuff, or like women who have it hard and then they just dismiss the struggles of men and act like, oh, my troubles are so much harder and he's just being ridiculous. Like, I just don't like that. That's what tears marriages and families apart, and I'm just not a fan of that. Also, okay, other side note is the one thing I don't like about Lily, the character that I do mostly like, is her relationship with her husband that comes up in this book. Well, she has two husbands. One of them, obviously, the way she treats that relationship is how she probably should have, so it's like, fine. I'm not, that whole thing is fine. But the other husband that comes up in this story, I think that he is not treated well by the author or by her. I feel like it brings up this idea of like, she says I love you, but she doesn't really mean it. She's just very fond of him and all this stuff. And I'm like, how can you not feel a lot of love and affection for a man who is that kind and good to you and your children? Like, he's probably the best person who's ever come into your life. And she like knows, but then she's like, oh, but I just don't love him that way. And I'm like, I'm sorry. I think this is just completely ignoring the truth about human emotions and hormones and relationships, that a lot of that love comes from a choice to find it, and you can develop it if you're working to develop it. And so I just think it very much dismisses some of those facts about human experience. But anyway, like I said, I'm DNFing this, unfortunately. I don't know what I'll read next. Tomorrow, though, Rick McDonald? I can't remember. McDonnell? I can't remember what his channel name is, because he's been gone for a while and I haven't interacted obviously much with him because he's been gone, but he just rejoined Booktube and he does the Booktube spin, and so I decided I'm going to participate in that. So I think I'll just maybe use that to determine my next read. If you don't know about it, it's basically like you write up a list of 20 books that are on your TBR that you'd like to read. He does a spin of a number wheel, and whichever number it lands on, that's the book you're going to read over the next couple of months. And I think he, at least the past few times, he's done 2 books. I don't know exactly how that's gonna go for me, but I do have my list of 20 already set, so maybe I'll kind of see what the outcome of that is and go from there. If it's like a book that I'm like, yeah, I can read that right now, I feel good about that, or if it's something I'm like, no, I actually would rather read something else, then that's fine. But I think I just need something a little more fast-paced, a little more fantasy oriented. I think I'm just in the mood for fantasy right now. I think that's what the issue is. Like, I mean, this had a bunch of other issues that I've already mentioned, but I also just don't think I'm really in the mood for historical fiction right now. So we will see what I end up picking up, but that is where we're at. So unfortunately, first book of this vlog is a DNF, but hopefully the next one will be more of a winner for me. All right, so it is the next day, the end of the day. It's been a long one. It took me forever to fall asleep last night, and then I'm still sick, and I'm also on my period, TMI, but between all 3 of those things, I am wrecked right now. But I really want to know what I'm going to be reading next. So I'm going to watch the Booktube spin. It was posted this morning. I thought about actually doing it this morning before work, like, which would have been at like 6:30 in the morning, but I was like, I am too tired to think about that. So I decided to wait, and it's finally time. I am finally ready. I am home. I have been out all day between work and some other things, so I'm happy to be here. And let's just pull up this video and see what we've got. I've got my list of 20. I guess I should tell you at least, I'm not going to go through all the books because there's 20 of them and I just don't really care to. But I will tell you my 4 categories that I created. So it's a list of 20 books, as I mentioned, and for every 5 I have a different category. So my first grouping is Book of the Month picks. My second is 2022 and 2023 releases that I haven't read yet. Third is TBR vets, so things that have been either on my elect electronic TBR, my Goodreads TBR for a very long time, on my radar for a long time, or books that I have literally owned forever that I need to read. And then the last one is kind of random, but it actually kind of works into most of these, and that's retellings. I have a whole section of retellings that I need to read, and I'm also kind of in the mood for something like that, so I was like, you know what, I'm gonna have my fourth grouping just be retellings. Mostly they're Greek myth, although I have one that's a Norse myth retelling, I have a King Arthur retelling. So anyway, those are my general groupings, and we're going to see what specific book I'm going to end up reading. I'm really excited.
So I'm not sure how successful that was. Let's just go out on a limb and say, nope. Hey everybody, my name is Rick, and for the first time in a long time, we're here to do the Booktube Spin. It's back. If you didn't see my announcement about this, if this is the first you are seeing about Booktube Spin number 8, I would suggest you stop right now, go and make your list of spin books. We are going to spin twice today and get 2 surprise books to read over the next couple months. Typically I do these at the start of a quarter. I started in January. You have until the end of March to read it. I started in April. You have until the end of June to read it. So we're getting a little bit ahead of ourselves by doing this in December. But as some people have pointed out to me over the years, they actually like to know these books a little bit in advance so they can plan the next month or 2 months reading with the knowledge of their spin picks. Do with that what you will. Okay, with all that being said, without further ado, whatever cliche phrase you want to throw in here, let's get started. Let's spin the wheel for the first time and see what we are all going to read with spin book number 1. I haven't had this kind of anxiety in a long time, so this is some fun. We're going to be reading number 5.
Okay, barely made it into number 5, and my number 5 pick is a good one. I think I'm going to wait until the second spin, and then I'll show you both of them at the same time.
I should have said this at the start of the video. Some people like to just do one spin. If you want to just do one, feel free to take number 5. If you want to do both, more power to you. If you want to take your favorite of the 2, we're pretty lenient over here. So let's do spin number 2 and see what we're going to be doing. Number 9. Okay.
Oh, interesting. Okay, let me go grab the books and I will show you what I ended up having win out. Okay, so my picks, so the first one would have been in my Book of the Month picks grouping, and the second one was in my 2022/2023 releases. So both of these are actually like earlier this year darlings. So my number 5 is The Adventures of Amina al-Sirafi by Shannon Chakraborty. I'm so excited about this. Honestly, this was one of the books that most sounded intriguing to me right now, with me kind of being in this weird almost slump trying to get out of it state. This actually might be perfect for what I need. So I'm actually so excited about this. Like I said, it was an earlier this year darling. A lot of people didn't love it, but I know of a couple people who did really enjoy it. In it, we follow a woman who is a well-known notorious pirate, but she's kind of retired. She's just wanting to be a mother and raise her family, but something calls her back into the seafaring life, and I've just heard it's fun, adventurous, and that's all I really want right now. I want something exciting, entertaining, enjoyable, and I think that this will really deliver that. So I'm really excited about this one. I think I'm going to have a good time with it. At least I really hope so. My number 9 pick is The Marriage Portrait by Maggie O'Farrell. So this one I believe came out last year. Yes, in 2022, but earlier this year it was up for the Women's Prize for Fiction, and I know of several people who were talking a lot about it earlier this year / towards the end of last year. This will probably be my final chance for Maggie O'Farrell. I have read 2 of her books before and neither of them have just wowed me. I've read Hamnet, and while I saw the writing as beautiful and I liked a lot about it, it just didn't grip my heart really, and there was just some aspects to it that I was like, oh, this is just kind of underwhelming. And then I read The Vanishing Act of Esme Lennox, which I had similar feelings to. Like, I enjoyed, but there were just certain things that I didn't love about it. I just feel like the hard thing about both of them were they were just on the cusp of being everything I would have wanted, but they just were missing something for my personal tastes. And so that's why I'm saying this is going to be my last chance with her. I think she just has great premises to her books. I just haven't been wowed by either of the 2 that I've read yet. So I'm hoping that this one ends up being better for me, that I end up liking it more, because I do think she's a wonderful writer. Like, that's one thing that has kept me coming back, besides her great premises for her stories. Just her writing style is beautiful and wonderful, and so I would love to have one of her books that I just love. I think if I went back to Hamnet, I actually might like it. Like, I've kept it because, well, first of all, I got the really beautiful like UK cover that I love, and so it's hard for me to get rid of that. But also, like, I just feel like going into it again, knowing exactly what I'm getting into and what to expect, I think I might enjoy it better in future. So I have hope for her still, but I do feel like if this one I have the exact same feelings I had about those other two, I probably should just not reach for Maggie O'Farrell anymore. So we'll see how it goes, but I am excited to give this a shot. This follows the story of Lucrezia de Medici. I always confuse those two, but de Medici, who was a real historical figure in Renaissance Italy, and I believe that it's believed that her husband murdered her when she was very, very young. And so I think that's what this is kind of discussing, but also just discussing her as a figure and her place in society at this time. And I just think it will be very interesting, and hopefully it will finally give me a Maggie O'Farrell to love, because I just really want to. I feel like she has all the makings of someone I would really love. She just hasn't quite hit it yet for me. So I think I'm going to start with Adventures of Amina al-Sirafi. I think this will be the next book I read. It's just, like I said, it's just what I think I need right now, and I already was kind of thinking this might be the one. I feel like between this and there's one other book, a King Arthur retelling, that I was really interested in reading. So these are the two that I felt most like I'd like to read. And since it came up, I'm taking that as a sign that I just really need to read it. So I will read that one first, and then I'll try to read this one this month. Unless I'm not quite in the mood for it, then I may wait, because we really could read these through the rest of December, January, or February. So I have a lot of wiggle room, but I think I'm gonna start with this and see what happens with this later. Okay, so it's been about a week, and I really haven't read that much of Amina al-Sirafi, unfortunately, but I have enjoyed what I've read. However, there are a couple other books that I have started that I'm really, really loving. So I wanted to do this update because I have things going on that are really exciting me in my reading life, which is so good, because I feel like it's been a while since I've been like super invested in books. I am finding though, the two books that I'm going to be discussing I've actually mostly been listening to on audiobook, and I think just with everything that's been going on in my life the past couple of months, I just really can't focus very well on physically reading. I think that has been the biggest hang up for me, but for a long while I was really struggling to want to listen to audiobooks, and so I've been kind of all over the place as far as figuring out what will work for me right now. But I do feel like with the right audiobook, it's being effective for me, and I think I just need to rely on that a little bit more throughout the rest of the year, although I do plan to continue to physically read Amina al-Sirafi. So let me just talk briefly about that before I continue with some of my deeper feelings about the other books. I am only 30 pages into this book, but I'm really enjoying the adventure tone of it. I really like the narration style coming from Amina herself, telling like a reporter about her experiences. And I definitely feel like I'm really going to enjoy myself through this. I just haven't, like I said, I haven't had the attention span or honestly the time all that much to physically read, the energy even to physically read. But I do have tomorrow off, and I have no plans, thankfully. So I plan to clean my apartment first, and then I think I'm going to try to get myself to really fall into this book. It's also hard for me because I know I've realized in the past couple years that I have a really hard time starting new books. I tend to be slow in the beginning of reading because I'm like, I'm not familiar with these characters, I'm not attached to this world or anything, and so I'm not able to really hit the ground running very well most of the time with new books. And so I feel that every time I start a new one, especially if it's not like a sequel in a series. If I read a sequel in a series, I'm a lot more likely to get started a little bit faster because I'm used to the world. I know I'm already attached to the characters and where I'm at. But with brand new books, I don't have that same feeling. So I'm definitely starting very, very slow with this, but I do hope that tomorrow I'll be able to get myself myself to, like I said, fall into it and really enjoy it and just get through a good chunk of it if possible. As for the two I mentioned that I'm really enjoying, so first of all, I have been continuing with Sylvia's Lovers by Elizabeth Gaskell. Finally, I'm so excited to finally get back to this, and I have been mostly doing audiobook via LibriVox because that's the only place I could find it. It is one of the LibriVox audiobooks, if you've used them before, where every chapter is a different narrator, which I don't usually love because some of them I don't really like their style, but it's doing the job. It's getting me through this, which is what I wanted, and I'm enjoying myself. I mean, it's very different from Gaskell's other works, although I will say one thing I love about Elizabeth Gaskell is I feel like all of her books feel pretty different. None of them feel super similar to the others, and this one is no different. So it definitely feels very different. It's following a much lower class of people very directly, whereas most of her others kind of follow middle to upper class people looking down at more poor people who maybe don't have the best education and stuff. So that's an interesting twist on this. I'm very curious to see where this book ends up going because I don't know if it's going to follow a similar line of Ruth, also by Elizabeth Gaskell, where the main character ends up in that sort of predicament. I don't want to spoil anything, but just to keep it as vague as possible, I don't know if it's going to be along that similar line or if it's going to take a slightly different route. But I know that there's a lot of melancholy things that occur in this book, and I haven't quite hit it, but the atmosphere is very melancholy. I mean, they're by the seaside and the sky is always clouded and nobody seems quite really happy, and so it's a very interesting read, I will say, and it could end up being one of my favorite Gaskell novels. My two favorites are North and South and then Wives and Daughters, and I don't know where this is going to end up falling with those, but so far I've been really enjoying myself with it, so hopefully it will continue to be enjoyable to me. Of course, being a Victorian novel, there is a bit of a slowness, especially in the beginning, to build up the characters and the world, and so I'm still kind of in the midst of that, but I think we're coming up on something pretty big happened that could lead all sorts of directions, so I'm excited to see where that goes. And then the other book I've been listening to on audiobook is Mistborn, or The Final Empire by Brandon Sanderson, the first in the original Mistborn trilogy. This is a reread for me, but it's been over 10 years probably since I read this series. If you follow my vlogs, you'll know that I just finished The Alloy of Law by Brandon Sanderson, and even though I understood what was going on in that, there were a couple things that came up that I was like, I know, or I'm pretty sure this connects back to the original trilogy, and I don't really remember it. So I was like, before I continue deeper into that series, which I know kind of gets more and more connected to the Cosmere in general, and more specifically connected to this series, I wanted to make sure I had this stuff fresh on my mind. So I've been listening to the audiobook of this, and I am so loving it. I'm so glad to be back in this world. I really didn't remember how much I loved this series, and honestly, Sanderson, I've mentioned before, but I always forget how much I love Brandon Sanderson until I read one of his books and I'm like, oh yeah, I just get so excited. So I'm really loving this. We have the plot to take over the Final Empire and to end it and rise up all of the poor people, the Ska, into a greater position of power and influence, and there's a lot of subtle machinations going on and manipulation of people and stuff that's very much involved in this, and I love that sort of stuff. So I think I probably appreciate some of these things even more now than I would have when I first read this, and I'm just having a blast. I'm just really excited about reading this, and hopefully I'll be able to fly through this whole trilogy in the audiobook format so I can continue to move forward within the Cosmere in general. So that's all I have to say for right now. All three of these books, I feel like I have some hope that at least, well, okay, I probably won't put Mistborn on my favorites of the year just because I've always known it was one of my favorite series, even if I didn't fully remember how much I enjoyed myself. But either of these two, potentially, as of right now, I could say they might end up being favorites of the year. I just have to see how the rest of the stories go, obviously, but I think we have some winners here, and I honestly really hope we do, because I think I've mentioned already in this video, it's been so long since I've had a new favorite come up, and that's just sad, and I want to remedy that. So hopefully that will happen with one of those. But for now, I'm going to get back into reading. Okay guys, so it is time for me to do another little clip for this. I may try to do at least one more potentially. I will get to why I'm not 100% sure in a bit, but I did finish a book yesterday. I finished Sylvia's Lovers by Elizabeth Gaskell. After all of these months, I did finally finish it, and I really enjoyed it a lot actually. It was such an interesting reading experience, to be honest. I mean, I listened to a lot of it on audiobook, but it was very interesting just because I love Elizabeth Gaskell's writing. I actually really like Sylvia as a character. I thought she was really interesting. She's very flawed and yet also a very genuine and good-hearted person. I really didn't like Philip, to be honest. I mean, he had good moments, but I feel like that actually was what lent to me enjoying this so much, was these characters were flawed and they had moments of driving me crazy, but in a very realistic, understandable way, where it was like they're just children and naive, and I appreciate that there's this exploration of human psychology and everything that goes into it as far as desire and just youthful personalities, naivete, and a lot of the dramatics that go along with that, especially when you're being raised in certain contexts where you are super sheltered from the world, and so you don't understand people as well as you could if you had more experience with them. And so I really liked that aspect. I really liked the atmosphere, the stormy sea atmosphere of this book, and there's a lot of melancholy, which I do enjoy. Two things I did not like about it. So first of all, Philip, like I said, I didn't really like him, and well, in some ways that was part of my enjoyment, was just kind of thinking about his psychology and stuff. What I didn't like was I felt like the narration was treating him as though he was perfect except for this one flaw, and I'm like, he is so self-centered and selfish, and it was just super, like, it was making him out to be like this devoted person, and I'm like, yes, he stays loyal to Sylvia through everything, but honestly it's in a very selfish way. Like, he doesn't actually understand who she is as a person at all and just wants her to be something she's not, and so it's not actually this real love that it's trying to be. He just thinks she's pretty and wants her to be a certain way. He wants her to be super meek and gentle all the time and quiet and interested in everything he does, and she's just not there for him. Like, she is a curious person and she has flares of temper that she later apologizes for, and she is a really devoted and hard worker and willing to take on responsibilities as needed and loves her parents and wants to take care of them, and yes, she may have fits of passion, but she's able to recognize when it's not particularly appropriate and think later about her mistakes and be willing to make up for them and change. And she's very adaptable and willing to do things, but she's still herself. She still has a personality, and he just like wants her to not be her. And there's so many times where the narrator even says, if only Philip understood Sylvia. Like, he just doesn't. But I felt like the narration, even though it does say that, it kind of is still treating him as like he ends up being the real victim in all of this, and I'm like, it's just not true. And I guess I should back up. It's not like it's treating him like he is the only victim. There's definitely a sense that Sylvia definitely has been hurt, and it's understandable why she reacts the way she does. But it really kind of makes it out to be like it's all Sylvia's fault that all of this happened. And I'm like, this man, I don't want to give any spoilers, but suffice it to say, this man does some pretty atrocious and almost permanent things out of misery for himself and feeling bad for himself. It's not even about her ever. It's never about her feelings. And the narrative treats it like there was only one big mistake he really made and everything else was perfect, and that's just not the truth. That being said, there was enough exploration of various flaws that it did, I don't know, it helped me like it a lot better. There were just definitely a couple, like, overall I felt like the genuine feeling was leaning that way as far as the narration's perspective on Philip, and I didn't really like that. So there was one thing. The second thing is I didn't like the ending. Now, I'm a tragedy girl. I do love a good tragedy, but this one just felt very unnecessary, and I just feel like it would have been a much more effective story if it had gone a slightly different way. Like, I feel like it went the way of like just being a tragedy for the sake of tragedy, and I wish there had been a little bit more of a unique unique and interesting take on the ending than there was. So that was pretty unfortunate to me. I did not really like the ending, which is unusual for me, like I said, but I just feel like Elizabeth Gaskell just ended up, playing into the hands of being like, I'm writing a tragedy and that's what I'm gonna do, instead of writing a story that had themes that this book felt like it should have had, of forgiveness and making the best of things, and I thought that was disappointing. I was really hoping it would build on some of those themes a lot more, and it just didn't. So yeah, those two things, Philip in some ways that the narration treated him that I disagreed with, and also the ending I didn't really like, but I loved really the whole rest of my experience. So I ended up giving it a 4.75 since it was only those two things. And I mean, a lot of the times I have a tendency where when there's a bad ending to like decrease it a lot, my rating a lot, just because I know the ending's not everything, but I'm like, it just brings everything else together. Like, it's the whole idea of having a conclusion, is it's tying up all the knots, and like everything that's led up to this has a different meaning based on what the ending is. It just does. However, I am trying to not rely so much on the endings and be able to take a step back and be like, you know what, this was a really good book. There were just a couple small things that I didn't love, including how things ended up. I didn't love that, but I loved the rest of my experience, so I shouldn't like make this book suffer just because of the ending. So anyway, I gave it 4.75. It may be on my favorites of the year, to be honest. 2023 was really a weird year for reading, unfortunately. I didn't have nearly as many favorites as I usually do, so you know, this is one where maybe in a different year, if I had read a lot of really great books that I loved, it wouldn't? I don't know. Maybe it would be. I really did enjoy it. So I don't know. I have to keep thinking about it, but I think there's a strong possibility this will be on my favorites of the year, given a little bit of time to think about it. As for everything else, I have barely read anything in the Adventures of Amina al-Sirafi since I last updated you, I'm pretty sure, which is unfortunate. It's really, like, I'm just really discovering I'm having a hardest time getting myself to physically read. Like, it's not that I'm not enjoying books, like, I'm really enjoying this. I just am having a really hard time, like, when I have my free time getting home, to just sit down and read. Like, it's just hard for me to put that energy into thinking in that way, and so it's just been tough, unfortunately, but I will keep working on it. I'm not going to finish it by the end of the year because it is the 30th of December, and I am going to, like, in the afternoon today, be hanging out with my roommates from college, and we're going to have a sleepover into tomorrow, and then I'm going to spend New Year's Eve with my family that night, and I'm sure tomorrow morning I'll just be with my friends. So I really don't think I'm gonna have time to read hardly at all. I'll have a few hours this morning before I head over there, but I don't think it's not nearly gonna be enough time to finish this. So this will probably be the first one that I finish in 2024, and hopefully I'll end up really enjoying myself. I'm a little disappointed, but you know, I'm tired of telling you guys that my reading has been slow recently, because it just has, and it's just continuing to be, and I think the more I talk about it, the more annoyed I get with myself about it. So I'm just gonna like tell you what I'm reading, and you'll just know that I'm still kind of in a mini half slump thing going on. So anyway, as for The Final Empire by Brandon Sanderson, I am halfway through and I'm loving it so much, you guys. I took a while between listens. I kind of was focusing on some true crime podcasts and stuff. So yesterday I just listened to a whole bunch of it, and I just am having the time of my life. I have mentioned this before. It's such a weird thing to like, but I like Brandon Sanderson's romances. I know they're not for everyone. I understand they're not like necessarily the most passionate romantic things, but that's what I like about them. Like, I love that his romances and his books, they're always characters who are just like, huh, you're pretty cute. And I don't know, they're just so sweet, and they just feel so much more committed, and like they really understand each other and just like each other and just like being around each other, and have that friendship aspect to their romance, but also that passion. And I just really love it. So I love the two in here. I'm not going to say who it is because I think there's sort of an aspect of spoiler in discussing it. But suffice it to say, our main female character in this has a romance with a guy, and I just love them together. They're so cute, and I just finally got to where they've met and they've had a couple interactions, and I just love it so much. So this is definitely when I don't think I'll finish this by the end of the year either, and that's why I wasn't sure if I'm going to do another update or not, because I want this vlog to go up this next week, and I doubt I'm going to finish either of these in the next couple of days. But maybe, I think I will do one last clip because I think I'm going to get some montage-y bits from the next couple of days with my party with my roommates tonight, and then New Year's Eve I'll probably just get a little bit of footage there so I can do that, and then anything I do end up reading in the next couple of days I'll give you a final update. It may just be a very brief thing, but we'll just see what happens. I'll let you know, and maybe I'll end up just talking a little bit more about my feelings about this because I don't feel like I've really talked all that much about how I'm feeling about it. I've mostly just mentioned that I haven't read that much and I've enjoyed it pretty well so far, so maybe I'll do that in my last clip. So anyway, this clip's going to end here so I can go and read a bit before I go to my friend's house, and I will give you my final update in the next couple of days. So it is the 2nd of January, and as promised, I'm doing this last clip for this vlog, finishing it out with a few more completed thoughts on the adventures of Amina al-Sirafi, since I've kind of mostly just been like, yeah, I'm enjoying it, but I'm not very far. So I wanted to give, I'm 100 pages in now, so I feel like I have a pretty good feeling about, as far as like what I like about the writing, main character, things like that. I'm sure I'll continue to enjoy various aspects as I go along of the plot and the characters, but for now, a little bit of more of a discussion. I really am enjoying it a lot. I'm still struggling to physically read just in general, so that is getting in the way, I think, of my heart really falling into it, but I think as I get further along, I tend to enjoy the latter half of books more than the first half, just because the first half it takes me a while to get into anyway, even when I'm not slumping like I am right now. So hopefully, I would really love to finish this by the end of this week if possible, so that I can move on to my next thing for the beginning of the year. But overall, as I said, I'm really enjoying it. I think the main character is really interesting and fun. I remember someone complaining about her talking a lot about being a really great pirate and like not really showing us, but I already disagree. I'm like, I already feel like I'm seeing her do some piratey things with her crew and stuff, like pretending to be a thief even though she actually is a thief, to break people out of jail in like a very piratey and cunning and manipulative way. So I feel like I am seeing some of it, so I don't really know where that comment comes from. Potentially the rest of this we just won't get as much of that. Maybe that individual, I think it might have been Murphy Napier, but maybe she wanted a little bit more cutthroat fighting and killing with the sword and everything, but I don't know. I feel like so far this has felt like she's a retired pirate like it should, and she still has her skills, but she is older and tried to move on with her life, and so to me it makes sense that we're getting maybe smaller doses rather than these great legendary feats. I also feel like part of the charm of pirates is that they're not actually that legendary. Like the stories get built up around them, but really like most of the time they're just acting ridiculous, like Jack Sparrow. So I don't know, I think I'm really enjoying the piratey aspects and like the main character, and feel like she's showing some of those pirate techniques already. We'll see how the rest of it goes. I really love the writing in this and the world exploration already, even though we haven't gotten a lot of it. I like what we have gotten so far and how it's been presented. So it does make me want to, I already really wanted to read the, I think it's called the Daevabad trilogy. I've already really wanted to read that, but now I want to even more because I think I will enjoy Shannon Chakraborty's style in that. I really like the frame narrative of her, the main character telling her own story to this journalist, and I like how it is played in. Like we have just brief little inserts from their conversation of her being like, what the heck, you're so ridiculous, what are you doing, and stuff. And I really, yeah, I just really like how her telling her own story is playing into the story itself. And overall, I think it's great. Like I said, I'm just struggling to get myself to like sit down and physically read. So that's what's getting in the way with this, but hopefully I'll be able to get back into it, find a little more desire to read physically during my free time and finish this up and hopefully enjoy it, but you will see that in my next vlog. And as I said, I did not really read very much over the past couple of days. I did read maybe like 30 pages of that, and I didn't do any Mistborn or anything. So that's it as far as reading updates. I did want to give you a brief, that's it as far as reading updates. I did want to give a little bit of a brief book haul because I went to Barnes & Noble this weekend. That gift card that I mentioned in my Christmas haul that you might have seen, I originally said I wasn't going to use it, I was going to wait, and then we ended up going for one of my friend's Christmas parties, the late Christmas party I went to, that you would have seen some clips from, and I did end up using that gift card because I couldn't help myself. So I ended up with 3 things, and I'll just run through those really quick. So I got David Copperfield by Charles Dickens in the Penguin clothbound editions. I've been collecting the Charles Dickens novels that I really enjoy in these editions, and of the 3 I've read that I've loved, this was the only one I didn't own yet. So I got David Copperfield. It has the kites on the front if you've read it, which I think is sweet. Definitely of the 3 that I have, it's not my favorite, but I really do love this book, so I definitely wanted to make sure I got this. Then I purchased All's Well by Mona Awad. This is a story following a teacher who really wants to do All's Well That Ends Well for this, I think it's a high school play, maybe a college play, but everybody there wants to do Macbeth, and I know it's kind of weird. This author is known for writing kind of weird and what the heck is going on type stories, and this is the one of the 3 that have kind of recently come out by her that I've been most interested in. So we'll see if I like this. I really don't know. This is very much a wild card of, I feel like I could either really enjoy it or I could hate it or I could be middle of the road with it. Like, I really have no idea where I'm gonna land with it, but I did want to at least try it, and I had the gift card, so I ended up picking that up. And then the final book I purchased was Emily Wilde's Encyclopedia of Fairies by Heather Fawcett. This is the Barnes & Noble exclusive edition. It has like the nice deckled edges and the flaps. Super beautiful edition, and of course has the annoying stickers on the cover, 2 of them that I'll have to get off. But anyway, I don't know much about this. I think it's about a girl in a magical world who is going to college and seeking to study fairies, I think. I'm not 100% sure if that's it or what goes beyond that, but I've heard good things about it, and it seemed like the type of book, both of these really were types of books where I didn't want to add a lot to my TBR, but both of them are relatively short and they were different from anything else I have on my TBR right now, my physical TBR, so I thought it would be a nice dash of something new and unique rather than just getting books that maybe match what I already have. So I felt like it was a good use of my Barnes & Noble gift card to get these 3, something that I'm collecting, and 2 that are just more unique. And that is everything. So this stack is what I read / completed / DNF'd in this video. Thank you guys so much for watching. I hope you are off to a great reading start of your year, of your 2024. Let me know down below if you've read any of the books I've mentioned in this video, as I would love to know, and I will see you next time. Bye!